It seems like every week something is new since the November 3rd election. Indeed, the last 4 years has been a roller coaster, as I've talked about on numerous occasions, but yet and still the bar seems to go lower with this Trump administration and indeed the Republicans. So, what have we here? We have lawsuits that have been filed by the Republicans all over the country. Most of those lawsuits, if not all, have been slapped down. Trump's lawyers have abandoned him. So now Rudy Giuliani comes in, who has not presented a case anywhere, argued a case in almost 30 years since he was U.S. attorney in the Eastern District. And he was just slapped down again. So that continues to go. Trump has not conceded. Of course, we've got the elections, the runoffs in Georgia, January 5th for states for the Senate. Two races there. But then what also we have is the president now, who has, 2 months in office or maybe a little bit less. He reorganizes the top brass of the Pentagon, fires Mark Esper, brings in folks, orders a drawdown of troops in Afghanistan. And some folks say, even Republicans are saying, that this is not good for national security or world security. We also have many people in his administration saying that this was the safest and most secure election ever, including the head of cybersecurity that he hired, a Republican. And what does he do? He fires him. All right. So that happens. That's probably predictable in a sense. But then we had something that happened strange in Wayne County overnight. Wayne County, Detroit, bastion of Black voters, where there was a split between the Electoral Commission, if I didn't get that correctly right, where they were not going to certify the vote. Scary. And I was talking to my good friend Eric Ham last night while he was on his spin bike, and he said, Julian, now we have to press the panic button. Let's bring in Eric Ham right now, of course, best-selling author and political analyst and our good friend. The good news, Eric, is that it was overturned quickly. As soon as I got off the phone with you, as a matter of fact, we've got a situation now where the Republicans recanted, and we've got civility restored back into this whole situation here. But to me, there has been an all-out assault on democracy as we know it. And my feeling is, Eric, that even though we're going to get past this, I truly believe that Biden will be sworn in January 20th. There are question marks in people's minds about an election where there shouldn't be. What's your take?
No, Julian, you're actually right, and that's why I think it's so important that even though the president's continued claims of voter suppression irregularities simply do not seem to bear out, I think it's important for the president's legal options to continue to run their course. And the reason for that is because when Joe Biden is sworn in on January 20th, there needs to be no doubt to the legitimacy of his presidency. And so therefore, President Donald Trump needs to continue to play this out, run this through the courts, federal, state, and Supreme Court if necessary. But again, there are so many steps that have to go through this entire process that now I think America is now getting an education on how this process works. In fact, just last night, when I was speaking to, I'm from Detroit. I'm from Wayne County. I worked for a state senator who represented Detroit. So I'm familiar with all of this. I was speaking to friends about what was happening last night who live in Detroit and who did not even know that this was happening, who did not even know that there needed to be a certification by Wayne County. Wayne County is the county that houses Detroit. The reason why this was so controversial, what took place last night, is because the Republican chair who sits on the county board of canvassers actually suggested that she was willing to certify all of the other cities in Wayne County except for Detroit. And we all know Detroit is a city that is over 80% African American. And here's where it gets interesting. A city also in Wayne County that borders Detroit. Well, it doesn't border Detroit, but it's just outside of Detroit. It's
Mhm.
called Livonia. Livonia has consistently been ranked as one of the safest cities in America. It's a city of more than 100,000 people. It also happens to be a city that's 95% white. And their variances in their election this year was higher than that of Detroit, suggesting that there were more discrepancies in Livonia's vote count than in Detroit. And Detroit is 8 times larger than Livonia. But yet here it is, you had the Republican chair of the board of canvassers saying, I'm willing to accept these results of this 95% majority white city whose variances are much higher than those of the city of Detroit, even though the city of Detroit is 8 times larger. But I'm unwilling to accept this vote. And not only that, but what she is doing is she's actually attempting to negotiate votes, as if this is some kind of trade-off. Well, I will trade you the rest of the county if we can exclude the voices and the will of the people of the city of Detroit. So what she is saying is the votes of Black people should not count. And I think that's where we got into so much concern and controversy about what took place yesterday.
And let me make sure I'm clear on this. In Livonia County, where it's 95% white, I'm assuming, and may be wrong, but I'm assuming most of those votes went to Trump.
No, Livonia is a city in Wayne County. It's not a county in of itself. It's a city.
Okay.
And Wayne County is overwhelmingly and heavily Democratic.
Okay. Yeah, that I know. Yeah. But I'm talking about where the white votes are. Were those whites voting predominantly for Republicans or for Democrats?
Well, that I do not know. But the fact is, we're still talking about a largely, and I suspect that most of those votes were probably Democratic.
Okay, all right, but still the Black vote under assault there. Not only in Wayne County, we're talking about Philadelphia. We're also talking about in Georgia and Atlanta and other parts where they're largely Democratic, but also largely Black. So here we have a situation where democracy has held up, and the good thing about this is the courts are holding tight. They're slapping down these lawsuits left and right. That's a great sign, because they are not going to one side or the other. They're not partisan. The outside of the courts, you even have Republicans that are stepping forward within the Trump administration. The people that he's hired to deal with the electoral process are coming out against him. Those are all good things. And there's also another great thing, and I'm going to talk about this later, where politics is local. If it were not for the backlash of people in Wayne County, a complete and total uproar, perhaps those Republicans may not have backed down. And I've said this many times, as you know, Eric, politics is local. And I think people are getting to understand that. But here's the thing. We've got a situation now where we have a country that's divided. I think most folk will agree with that. But despite all of that, despite the overwhelming evidence of a secure election, there are still people that believe, like some neighbors where I live, that the election was rigged. So I guess my question is, as we move forward, as Joe Biden assumes the presidency of the 46th president of these United States, he's going to have to deal with a lot of people that may not believe that he is legit, even though everybody for the most part is saying, all the elected officials, that this was a secure election. How do we get past this? How do we repair our democracy, if we can at all?
I think when we're talking about a democracy, we have to recognize each individual participation as a citizen of this democracy. And if we look at a state like Georgia, where we know there's a runoff taking place, let's take that as an example. In the primary, actually, Donald Trump got 24,000 more votes in the primary than he got in the general election. One of the reasons many believe that happened, and the Secretary of State of Georgia, also a Republican, believes that President Trump's efforts to suppress the vote to suggest that the vote was rigged actually harmed Donald Trump in Georgia. And so what we are seeing here is this is, the throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because Donald Trump did self-damage in a state that he could have very well won based on his own rhetoric. And so what we're seeing here is the power of the presidency, the power of his words. And I think it's going to take time for a Biden presidency, but also for the process of democracy to work. And also, Julian, we have to ask ourselves, do many Americans who believe this, who support Donald Trump, do they want a democracy? Because what we're seeing, Julian, every single day, as you mentioned, democracy, it's playing itself out. Even in Wayne County with what took place last night, democracy is playing itself out, because if in fact Wayne County had deadlocked and were not able to come to a resolution, the state would have stepped in, the state board of canvassers, which is something they have done actually before. And in fact, the Secretary of State put out a statement last night saying that we are prepared to step in and take over this process, which is something we have done before. So there are these checks and balances as you go up the food chain that are playing themselves out. And so Americans can either accept democracy working and the levers of democracy being pulled, or they can accept, or they can choose to reject it and say, we don't want this. And I think what we're seeing is the latter, not the former, because clearly democracy is working, be it through the independence and the power of the states, or the independence and the power of the judiciary. The process is working.
For a person like you and me and others who I believe were of level-headed mind, it makes perfect sense. And I really love the way you played this out, because I haven't heard it said that way before. And that gives me relief. I'm just concerned, though, Eric. I'm not worried, but I am concerned about people who continue to defy logic. Those folks who will see a sky like you and me that is clearly blue, but they're going to believe it's red based upon one demagogue. And I guess that's a problem. And I'm just wondering, if these folks will either come around, they'll die out. I don't know. But that's a concern that I have. And this goes beyond, I think, the issue of race, or maybe not. Maybe people are so concerned and upset the way this country is going, how the color of the country is changing, that they're willing to overlook everything. They're just willing to do whatever they can to keep whatever sense of power they think that they do have or might have. And that goes to the average citizen as well as to our politicians, who seem also not to care about this country, but whether or not they're going to get reelected again. Your thoughts?
Stephen Douglas issued a concession speech when he lost to Abraham Lincoln. And in his concession speech, he vowed to work with this president, and he kept his word. He actually went and visited. He actually went to southern states to ask them to work with them, to get behind President Lincoln and to unify and heal this country. But as we know, 11 of those states actually began the process to secede, and hence, we devolved into a civil war. And so what you had there, Julian, were people who simply were unwilling to listen, to engage on the truth. They wanted to hear their own truth. And that's what we are seeing play out right now. People want their own truth. And oftentimes their truth is anathema to the system of government that the framers created and constructed. And so now the question is, what do we do as a nation to ensure that this government, this idea of America stands true, stands firm? And I think it's going to take those who want democracy to do everything they can to uphold it. It's very much like this issue of national health care. One of the reasons why President Obama wanted to establish a healthcare system is because you had what was known as free riders, those who didn't have healthcare, but that were raising up the cost on others for that healthcare. And in order for this democracy to stand, those who want it are going to have to bear the brunt of the work, do most of the work to ensure that it stands, even though you have those who are systematically fighting to undermine it and to destroy it.
Yeah, well said, Eric. Look, I think that as we go on here, I think the storms are passing. The concern, though, is how well prepared will the Biden administration be come January 21st, once they take over. We could only hope with the experience that he has garnered over the years of 47 years plus, and the alliances he has in Congress on both sides will help, as well as world leaders. And it seems like now folks around the world, leaders are starting to rise up and say, hey, look, recognize this man, Joe Biden. I was looking at something this morning, in Joe Biden's, I think it's an ancestral town in Ireland. They have flags, American flags waving, and the whole bit, and looking for a brighter day. So I think, like as they say in a biblical sense, the world is indeed groaning for something new and something better. And I've always said there's more of us than there are of them. We've got a lot of things to talk about between now and January 20th. I also want to tackle the issues of Antifa. We were talking about this the other day when I called you up, and what that means, what it stands for, how different that is than white supremacist groups, and why the president and others are leaning on that more so than anything else, and what Antifa actually means. But we will get to that. This day is just beginning for us. I know you have a lot of things going on your end. You have to put on your Superman outfit, your little Black Panther outfit, and appear on all sorts of networks around the world. Your magic carpet, the states, and all that stuff. But get to that. We'll talk soon and see what else happens. Of course, I'm sure there are going to be more twists and turns as the day goes on, as these weeks go on. My church is we're praying for change all around. So we'll talk, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks a lot, buddy.
All right. I've talked a lot about, especially when I started On Point, of the power of the Black vote, and the power that we as African Americans have. And we have more than we think. Eric Ham said something that was so real, that we're seeing democracy play out, but it can only play out if we have willing participants outside of what's going on the judicial side, where our law system is holding up under the pressure of the onslaught of lawsuits that are baseless and pointless. That's playing out in the favor of democracy, not in the favor of any party, not in the favor of any race, but in the favor of democracy. But what we also see, as I've also said, with the power of the vote and being involved, I can only emphasize it based upon what we have witnessed, and I'm going to say it again, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Let me repeat that one more time. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And if we get involved, especially on the local level, as we've seen in Wayne County and Detroit, where you had hundreds of thousands of Black votes in peril because you've had a few Republicans wanting to overturn something which was legal and make it their own and put in their own electors, who stepped up? The local folk. Remember that. Remember not to give up. Remember to keep voting. Remember to keep yourself involved, aware of the process, because if you don't, democracy doesn't work. And the only people that we have to blame if democracy doesn't work is ourselves. We've seen a lot of turmoil this week. And as Martin Luther King said many years ago, there are going to be some difficult days ahead. But they're always difficult days. But always remember, everything worthwhile is upstream. We'll see you next week.